Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by the Retirement Advantage. Today, we will be providing a tutorial on how to electronically file your year-end census data using Plan Sponsor Link. My name is Bill Sunigal. I'm the Marketing and Communications Director for the Retirement Advantage. Today's presenter is Jeff Copini, TRA's Client Relationship Manager. Before we go any further, just wanted to review some of the functionality of GoToWebinar. Now, your active participation is very important throughout this session. Right now, I have everyone on mute just to avoid any background noises that may distract you from listening to the webinar. You do, however, have the ability to submit questions using the chat or questions pane located near the bottom of the control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. You can enter your questions and comments in either of the boxes throughout the presentation. Your questions will be answered at the end of the webinar during the Q&A session. I would now like to hand off the mic to Jeff.
Thanks, Bill. As Bill mentioned, my name is Jeff Copini. I'm a Client Relationship Manager here with the Retirement Advantage, and I've been with TRA for the better part of almost 2 years now, but I've been in the retirement administration industry for close to 14 years. What we're going to go over today is our process for collecting year-end information so that TRA can perform any compliance or year-end administrative work for your retirement plan. Within the past month or so, you should hopefully have received an email from the Retirement Advantage about a request for the year-end data collection. And I have a copy of what the email looks like here. Just to familiarize yourself with it, the subject of the email that's been sent will be year-end data collection file. It'll reference your company name. It'll give you information on how to access the Plan Sponsor Link website, which is referenced right here, www.tra401kclient.com. If you don't have the email, you can also access the Plan Sponsor Link website by going to tra401k.com. And if you click on again up here at the top, you can also go to Plan Sponsor Link log. And what it will do is it'll bring through to me. A helpful hint would be probably to, I would say, bookmark either the TRA main page or the TRA Plan Sponsor Link website, just so you have easy access to it. But what you'll do, in order to access the account, your username is always going to be your email address. So it's whatever email address that we have set up on the system for you. And if it's your first time to the website, you can click on First Time User here at the bottom. And you can type in your email, and we'll do pretty quickly is send you a temporary password so that you can gain access to the account. Likewise, if you before but can't remember your password, you can do the same function. Type in your name, which is your address. The system will send you a temporary password so you get the site. So do right now is I'm going to log into the site. There we go. And that's going to bring you through to is my asks. What you'll see, in reference to this year-end data collection, is you'll see it labeled on the screen under name and then a rough plan year. Now I have a couple different examples here. That's why there's a 2018 and a 2017 one showing. So we're going to take a look at the one that says 2017 first. And in order to begin going through it, you're going to go over here and you're going to click Begin Task. And what you'll notice after you click Begin Task is you'll see the various steps along the way to collect. Take your progress through each one of the steps. You'll be prompted to save. And as you go through it, you can save your progress. So if you get through and need to come back to it, you can always come back to where you left off and finish completing the process. So the first step is just verifying your company information. It's just general information about the business, address, and contact phone number. If you need to make any changes, you can always click, there's an edit icon, and it'll pop up, and you'll be allowed to update your information here. Likewise with the phone number, you can update your information there. There's an additional phone number that you have. You can always add contact, and you can always add additional info as needed. Now, a nice feature with the site is that there's a notes function also, and you can put in any additional notes that you hold for TRA as we move through the process. And what will happen is notes, after you save them, will actually carry through to the, and you'll be able to find your while we get to the end. So like I said, general company information is going to be your address and contact information. And if that looks correct, then you can click Save and move on to the next, which is company information and verification step. We're just looking for you to verify your tax ID number, fiscal year end, entity type, payroll frequency, payroll provider. And again, if there's any changes that you need to make to any of this information, you can always make the update on the site. The red asterisk items are items that are required. So if they're blank, you're going to need to fill those out before you can proceed on. But if the information looks correct, click Save and move on. The next step will be information on principals or owners of the business. Now, the company may have one solo owner. So in that case, you would just list the individual title at the company, whether they're an officer of the company or not, and then their ownership percentage. So in our example here, Jim and Joe Smith own 50% of the demo plan that we're taking a look at today. If it's a situation where you don't have an individual that's the owner, the situation comes up a lot with nonprofit organizations or chambers of commerce, homeowners associations, things like that. You don't need to name an individual. You can just list the company. You don't need to put a title. And then you can also just put ownership as 100% in those type of instances. Again, if the information looks correct, you can proceed on to the next step, which will be family member information. Family member information is important because family members' ownership can be attributed to other individuals at the company. For instance, if an owner also has his spouse working for the company as well. The owner may have 100% ownership in the plan, but the spouse, the wife, her ownership is the husband's ownership is attributed to the spouse. So we want to know that information because it is important for us in order to run accurate compliance testing for the company. But again, this information, if it's accurate and if it's loaded in, you can click Save and you can move on. If this information is blank, you'll be asked to add that information, and you can add that by clicking again the plus icon. Type in the name. There's a drop down for the relationship of the individual, and then also who they're related to in the plan. The next step is other businesses. In some 401 plans, the owners may not only own Company A that sponsors the 401k plan, but there may be other businesses that they may own as well. It's important to know that information, again, for us to be able to run accurate reporting for a company's 401k plan. So in this instance, Joe Smith, not only does he own 50% of the company that we're taking a look at, but he also owns ABC Company. So again, if you need to add that information in, you can always click the plus sign up here at the top, and you'll be prompted into the information for any other that another own that the company owns. The next is confirmation. This is information that is extracted out of the TRA record keeping system, and we'll just let you know who are the individuals that we have listed as contacts for the plan. If there are any changes that need to be made to any of the contact information, you can contact your client relationship manager, and you can reach us at 888-872-2364. And you can contact them and we can update the information. Or, as I said, the feature with this is that you can also add a note as well. And you can say the individual company and the new main contact for the plan will be John Doe. And you can submit that information, save it, and that'll get forwarded over to us so that we can update our records as well. Now that we've gotten through the information regarding the company, this drills down to a little bit more detail on the plan and what we can do to provide accurate plan administration for the company now that the year has come to a close. So, as again, you'll see there's a lot of questions that have the red asterisks next to them. So those are ones that you're going to be required to answer along the way in order to actually submit the year-end data collection. I'm not going to go through all of the questions today. If you do need that consultative approach, we can go through these items. You're going to want to reach out to your client relationship manager at 888-872-2364. Speak to them, and we can obviously walk you through the steps of completing each one of these sections. But in my experience, there's a couple that sometimes plan sponsors, if they've never seen this information before, it's particularly in this type of format, they may question whether or not they're answering it correctly or not. So I'll go through a couple of those that I found that plan sponsors sometimes might have questions on. Number one up here at the top, did the employer maintain any other retirement plans in addition to this plan that TRA did not provide administrative services for? So sometimes companies will have an outside benefit, and it gives some examples of some plans that maybe we are not doing the administration on, but the company might sponsor with another administrator. So things like profit sharing plans, pension plans, defined benefit plans. If the company doesn't have anything additional on top of the 401k plan for anybody else, then you can simply mark no through this section here. And I'm going to zip through some of these other questions. Another one that plan sponsors may question whether or not how to answer it is for number 3, for the plan that TRA services, where assets held at multiple investment providers. And typically most 401k plans will have their standard lineup with whoever their plan provider is, whether it be Principal, American Funds, Lincoln, those type of organizations. Sometimes there might be outside assets held outside of that standard lineup. You'll want to check with your investment advisor to see if the plan does hold any assets with more than one provider. In our example, I'm going to mark no. And if it is no, then you can skip this next section here because, again, there's no red asterisks there. That's only applicable if you need to mark yes for number 3. Likewise, another question that some plan sponsors might have is, do they hold any non-traditional assets like they're referencing here in number 5? And it gives examples for different types of non-traditional assets, meaning things that are not your typical mutual funds that are held inside a 401k plan. Again, if you have questions on what type of holdings the company has, a good resource would be to talk to your client relationship manager, but also with your investment advisor to see if the plan does hold any of these non-traditional holdings. An important question that's asked, and it's important just for general administration of the 401k plan, is in number 7, and have all newly eligible employees been offered the opportunity to participate in the plan on their initial entry date? When people become eligible for the plan, it's important for the company to make sure that they're notifying those participants that they're eligible to participate in the plan, to give them the opportunity to enroll or to make an election to not enroll. Most plans are on top of making sure participants are notified. So for our example, we're going to mark yes here, but if there were ever an instance where maybe somebody wasn't offered timely the opportunity to participate in the plan, you're going to want to have a conversation with your client relationship manager to see if there's any steps that need to be taken to resolve that issue. Another important question is with respect to rehired employees. If you have a participant that has been with the company, was eligible for a time, and they left the company for whatever the reason, once they're eligible, upon rehire, they're going to be immediately eligible for the plan. So you want to make sure, again, that you're offering the participant the option to enroll in the plan, and just make sure you have some documentation supporting that you actually did offer the benefit, and then it's up to the participant to elect whether or not they want to participate or not. again, in most instances, this question is only going to be applicable if you do have rehires. If you don't have any rehires, then you're not required to answer this question. Question is to the I'm going to go over here in a minute, and asking sure that when you submit the census information for a company for a given year, that you're providing us with all employees that have earned compensation and worked hours in the plan during the plan year, regardless of their participation in the plan and regardless if they were with the company as of the end of the year. You want to make sure that anybody that was active at all during the plan year is listed on the employee census file in order for us to provide accurate year-end reporting for the 401k plan. These next questions here are just in reference to if any employees are to be excluded from the plan. So there's questions on if the company has any leased employees, union employees, or non-resident aliens. We need to know that information if we're going to test the plan accurately. So if you do have any of these types of employees, you would mark yes and you include them on your census file. For the sake of today, we're going to mark no, and we just have normal W-2 employees. Last question is, did any employees terminate due to death or disability during the year? This can be important for a couple of reasons. Your client relationship manager will go over with you if you do have anybody at your plan that did pass away or went on disability for more than 12 months, because that may impact some contributions that the company. Now, the next section from 24 is in reference to any type of pure contributions that the company can make. This plan that we're looking at right now is a non-safe harbor plan. I have an example of a safe harbor plan. I'm going to have to. And if your company has a safe harbor plan, there'll be a section, see, for number 15, it changed from matching contributions to required contributions. Safe harbor plans have required components, required employer contribution. Company has those contributions here in section 16, either a form of employer match that's given to qualify to be a safe harbor plan, or there's a 3% non-elective contribution. And your plan document will indicate which type of contribution you have. If your company did not deposit those safe harbor contributions throughout the course of the year, you can ask TRA to help calculate the allocation for you. So you can indicate yes or no through this section here, whether or not you need TRA's assistance to calculate who's to get how much from a particular type of contribution. If you've been funding that contribution throughout the course of the year, you can mark no for that section. Then what we'll do through the compliance process is we'll just make sure that everybody that's received a contribution during the course of the year has received the proper amount. And if adjustments need to be made, your client relationship manager will follow up with you at that point to discuss what options are available. Likewise, in the previous example that I showed with matching contributions, if the company had been making matching contributions throughout the course of the year and they're not a safe harbor 401k plan, again, there's a similar section to the same effect. You need TRA's assistance in helping you calculate those type of employer contributions at the end of the year. Again, we would go ahead and we would do the same type of process of making sure that based on whatever match formula you decide to use for your company's contribution, that nobody's exceeded any contribution limits based on the formula that you decide to use. And I'm going to go back actually to the example with the matching contribution, because there is one piece to that is important, because it speaks to a section on employer contribution where you can actually enter in the formula for the type of match that you want to use. So in section 17 here, it says, if yes, what is the matching formula you would like utilized? So a very common one for the beginning is 50% up to 6%. So that means if somebody defers 6% of their pay, they would get a 3% match. So if you need TRA's assistance in helping you calculate that type of match, and if it's not done on a per pay period basis, we can prepare that for you. If you've done it throughout the course of the year, just let us know the formula that you used, and we can make sure that the proper amount of matching contributions been applied to each individual participant. In number 19, you can let us know what date and contributions to the allocation prepared by a certain date within 15 business days. Once we get a year-end data collection after the end of January, you want to have a conversation with your client relationship manager just to make sure that we can accommodate getting you the allocation within your needs. But generally, allocations take us about 15 business days to prepare. As we go down through the questionnaire, there's a section on employer discretionary contributions. And employer contributions are also referred to a lot of times as profit sharing contributions. And they are, like it says in the title, they're discretionary. So from year to year, a plan may choose to fund this type of contribution. They may not fund it. It's just an option that's available in the 401k plan. So in our example here, we're going to say that our plan does want to fund the profit sharing contribution. Now, what you can do in this section is you can tell us what's the goal of the profit sharing. If a company has a pool of money that they'd like to allocate as a contribution to the employees of the plan, you can type in a dollar amount. And what TRA will do with that dollar amount is figure out who's to get what from that $100,000 pool of assets. And we'll allocate it based on the described method in your plan document, whether it's pro rata, meaning it's an equal portion to everybody, or if you have other profit sharing allocation formulas available, new comparability, age weighted, Social Security integrated, just depending on your plan document will let us know how we need to go about allocating that money. If the goal is not a specific dollar amount, if the goal is just to maximize the owners and minimize contributions to everybody else, you can type in max, min, and we will figure that out, and we'll let you know what that breakdown is through the course of the compliance testing process. And again, it asks the same question as well. If you haven't been funding the profit sharing contribution during the course of the year and you need TRA's help to calculate the profit sharing, you can click yes, and your client relationship manager and the compliance analyst that's working on the plan with you will be able to help you figure that out. The last section of questions here on the questionnaire is only in reference to brand new plans. And brand new plans would be plans that began contributions to the plan only starting in 2017. So if your plan has been in existence prior to 2017, again, since there's not a red asterisk next to this section, you're not required to complete it. These sections are important for first year plans because we need to know, for instance, in number 26, what was the first date that deferral started in the plan year? Because contributions for a 401k plan, from a testing perspective, may only take a look at eligible compensation. So we would want to know what date the deferral start, because compensation earned before that first deferral date may not be counted for certain parts of the compliance testing that we may run on a plan. So our plan's a first year plan for our demo, and they started making contributions on 4/1. Now, also, if it's a first year plan, for compliance testing purposes, it's also important to know who's considered to be a highly compensated employee. And aside from ownership, highly compensated employees are anybody that earned $120,000 or more in the prior plan year. So for the 2017 testing, it's anybody that earned $120,000 or more during 2016. If the company didn't have anybody like that at the company, you can just write none. Or if there is an individual that you'd like to put in there, I wish this were the case, but you can put in any other individuals that may have earned $120,000 or more in the plan in the prior year, and you can move on. And that completes the plan step. And what I'll do is I'll click through these. And if there are actually any pieces of information that weren't answered, it will give you a red notification here that says that there is potentially a step that you didn't complete. So I missed this section here. So again, I'll click Save. And we'll bring you through to the 5500 question. Now, the 5500 for the 401k plan, it's an IRS form, and it's a form that CRA will prepare for your business every year that the 401k plan still has assets in it generally. The 401k, or the 5500, I should say, is an IRS form that reports general plan information to the IRS, number of participants, asset balances in the plan, but there are some compliance type questions that are asked on the 5500, and this section here speaks to some of those compliance type questions. The first question is, have you remitted any late deferral deposits or loan payments during the course of the year? And from a Department of Labor perspective, a late deposit is anything that's submitted after the 7th business day following a check date. So if your company has a check date as of today, you want to make sure 7 business days from date those deposits are made into the plan. If anything has exceeded that, that technically would be considered a late deposit. You may want to have a conversation with your client relationship manager about what specifically that means, because there are steps that are needed in order to address that. So for the sake of argument today, we're going to mark no that we didn't have any late deposits. And if you know, you get section number 2 here. The third question is in regards to a company's Fidelity Bond, or sometimes it's called an ERISA bond. And this acts as the insurance on the 401k plan. It insures the assets of the 401k plan against any fraud or dishonest handling by anybody that might have access to the funds in the account. A Fidelity Bond needs to be about at least 10% of the trust assets as of the beginning of the plan year for a company. So if your company has $100,000 in planned assets, you want to have at least a $10,000 bond in place. If you have a bond, you know the dollar amount, you can indicate that it's in the amount of, and you can go ahead and type that you have that level of coverage in the plan. There are some options with insurance providers, and again, you're going to want to check with your insurance agent or whoever is providing the coverage for you, what type of bond you might have in place. There might be ones out there that will be specific to a certain dollar amount and be in effect for a certain term. There are others that are out there that have an auto inflation guard, which will adjust coverage to meet the minimum requirements each and every year. So just depending on who your insurance provider is, you'd want to check and see if you do have that auto inflate guard. If you do, we will automatically calculate that it's with 10% of the plan assets. You just want to make sure that you maintain those records on who you have your bond through. And if there are questions on bond coverage, we'll be sure to address those with you. If for whatever reason, maybe your bond coverage is not enough as of the end of the plan year, we'll be sure to notify you so that you can address that with your insurance agent in case you need to adjust coverage for more. Questions 5 and 6 are just in reference to if there were any resolution to terminate the plan that's been adopted during the course of the year. So if the company has made a decision to terminate the 401k benefit, that would be really the only reason that you would mark yes to this section here. If not, then you can go ahead and mark no. Question 6 is in reference to any assets or liabilities from this plan or assets and liabilities that may have transferred into the plan during the course of the year. So a good example of what Section 6 is referring to would be if this particular company that we're looking at today, if they went ahead and they acquired another business that had a 401k plan and the assets from that other company were merging into the plan we're looking at today. If that were the case, we'd want to mark yes here. And then you'd also be asked to supply the information about that other company, because that is a question that's looked at for 5500 purposes. If nothing like that's happened during the course of the year, simply go ahead and mark no for that section, and you can move on to the last question, is just asking, would you be willing to be a reference for future TRA clients? in case they have questions on how the service is or anything like that. So I'm going to say that I'm going to be a reference moving forward here. And the last, after the questionnaire, is actually providing the employees. Now, you can enter the information in a couple different fashions, and I'll go through both of those right now. As you can see on the site, there's going to be census data for employees that we have information on already. So you'll see we have the Flintstones and the Rubbles, and their information, social security number, dates of birth, dates of hire, general census data about them is already preloaded in there. Now, if your company is smaller in size, what you can do is you can manually go ahead and you can add the census data for each individual person. So if you click the edit icon right here, we'll bring up Fred Flintstone, and we'll have, see there's for required information on Fred for the 2017 plan year. So you can go through, you can add total gross compensation, you can add if Fred had any pre-tax salary deferrals, and also his. So Fred, for our purposes today, we'll say he made $40,000. He put in $5,000 in pre-tax salary deferrals, and he worked 1,500. So you can do is you can click save, and as you scroll left to right, you'll see that information saved. Now, what you also want to do with the census information is you want to make sure getting us any new hires they have in the course of the year. Again, regardless of their participation in the plan, having a full and accurate census of all the employees is very important because it allows for better tracking and better record keeping, better administration overall with the plan. So I see, for instance, Bam Bam terminated in July of 2017. So this is also a way for us to capture any information about employees that may have left the service of the company during the year. That way in future years, we're not asking questions about them. If we're being accurately updated about their status within the company, we'll be able to track that more accurately. Now, having said that, the web view, again, is good for maybe one-off adjustments or for companies that are smaller in size. If your company is a little bit larger in size, there may be a better option because you can see the information is kind of truncated here in the screen and you have to go left to right. What I recommend to the plan sponsors that I work with is to use, there's an import-export function up here at the top. What that allows you to do is you can export all of this census that's appearing here website and drop it into a format. You sample the file that I have here. What it'll do is be two on the bottom. There's an instructions tab and there's an employees tab. The instructions tab is general information about all the different fields that are available on the site. If you click to the employee tab, will be the actual employees, and it's an easy format because you're able to see possibly all the different fields that you might have to enter in for on participants or employees of the plan. What you can do after you've entered in that information for gross comp, salary deferrals, if there's employer contributions that you've done during the course of the year, and then there's hours worked over here on the right. And the information out, you can go back to the website and you can click import. And what you'll do is with this file, go to a 401k plan folder maybe that you have on your computer or save it to your desktop. And then you can click the import function. What that is, you can browse. And any other, you have the information onto the website so that everything is loaded and ready for us to review once you're ready to submit that. A lot of plans may find that talking to their payroll service provider, if they work in-house, they might be able to pull that year-to-date information onto our spreadsheet. There is some functionality with the actual Excel file itself. So if you need to pull, if you maybe not all the employees that are listed were all the employees during a given plan year, you could add those to the Excel file. You can't insert rows across the top, or I'm sorry, insert columns across the top. But you can always add a row with additional information, add their name, social security number, dates of birth, dates of hire, that sort of information. And then when you import that file, that information will be available to us on the website. Now, as you take a look at this file, for instance, many plans will have more columns that appear than are needed. And you'll want to check with your client relationship manager if you're unsure about what columns to use. TRA, we cater to a lot of different 401k plans, so we give as many options as we possibly can to gather information so that we reduce the amount of follow-up questions that maybe we have to ask to a particular plan sponsor. So some of the columns that you're going to use commonly are total gross compensation, pre-TRA deferral, raw salary deferral, employer matching contributions, if you do them. If you don't do them, or any other type of employer contribution, then you don't have to fill those columns out. The columns in reference to these different types of compensation are going to be only applicable in certain situations, because some companies might exclude these types of compensation for plan purposes. So a good example is Fringe Benefits. So if a company were to pay somebody an auto allowance or moving expense, sometimes that compensation is not going to be included in the 401k plan. So what you would want to do in that instance would be put in $50,000 total gross, but if they had Fringe Benefits, just let us know that out of that $50,000, $1,000 of that was a Fringe benefit. And then you can go ahead and you can upload that information on it. If there are issues with information that's being submitted, there's a link up here at the top. And this will do either two types of, it'll be errors and there'll be warnings. Errors are something that need to be often actually go ahead and complete the task. Warnings are something that are rarely called submissions, the more informational, but it's just a check to make sure that the information that you're reporting is. So, for instance, if that you put compensation on the file for, but there are no hours being reported, then you're going to want to make sure that you go back to the file and make sure you update those hours. Same thing for somebody that's looking like they're an active employee during the course of the year, but they have no compensation being reported. That's going to error out, and you'll want to make sure that you either provide us a correct termination date or actually provide us the correct compensation and hours worked for the individual for the year. But once we have that information loaded, what's going to happen is you can click Save, and then you'll go through to the approvals. As you can see here on the side, if a step is incomplete, there'll be a big red X that'll let you know that you have to go back to that step. Any notes that you've put in along the way will be displayed here. And then once you're ready to transmit the information to TRA, there's a Sign and Submit button, and you'll be asked to input your contact information, the name of the submitter, email address, and you'll get a confirmation back once the process has been submitted to TRA. And that, in a nutshell, is the process itself. I understand it's a very high-level review. If there's any particular type of questions, maybe unique to your company, again, use that notes section. It's a great tool to use. Also, your client relationship manager is a great resource as well to use in case you have any questions on how to submit information to us. And if any information is ever called into question, your client relationship manager should be in contact with you either through phone or phone and email about trying to resolve any issues so that we can get your compliance testing and reporting done timely. And with respect to that, that sort of concludes my review. Bill, do we have any chat questions to go over?
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, we do. We have a couple.
Okay.
I've been answering a couple well via online just in regards to the audio. I apologize for some of the glitches that we've experienced. I will look into it in regards to GoToMeeting. Some have asked if we're going to be sending out a recorded link. Yes, we will be sending a recorded link to review this webinar. For the most part, it looks like we have 4 or 5 questions. First question, can more than one can more than one person for an organization have a username and password linked to the organization's account?
Yes, they can. What's going to drive that process is making sure that, I'll go back to the contact. If there's more than one contact, we'll have a main contact on our end, but we can always add secondary contacts. The rights appear on the contact screen, show basically what level of access that people have rights to view when they log on to this plan sponsor link website. So if there's a HR manager, but there's also maybe an HR generalist or an assistant behind the scenes that might need access to that information, you're just going to want to contact your client relationship manager to make sure that we have that individual added. And again, your username is always going to be your email address. So as long as we have an email address linked to that individual, they should be able to have access to the site.
Excellent. Thank you. Another question, if I need to exit the collection part way through, will the information I previously answered be saved, or will I need to re-enter it?
You should, it should save any previously answered questions.
Correct. Thank you. Next question, how do I get the account access to the site to answer these questions?
How do you get access to the site to answer?
If you'd like to grant access to somebody else, you could just reach out to your CRM for assistance. They can provide some login credentials. Jeff, could you please repeat the phone number you mentioned again for any questions they may have?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be, it's 888-872-2364.
Thank you. Next question, when is this information needed by?
In the initial email that we sent out, we're requesting that the information be sent to us by January 31st. I think we're realistic enough that possibly January 31st may not be realistic for all plans, but in order for, I would say, timely processing of plans information, looking towards the end of this month is the goal for getting this getting the year-end data collection completed by.
Excellent. Thank you. Doesn't look like we have any more queued up questions, and we'll wait a couple more minutes, but if there aren't any more questions, we're going to wrap up this webinar session. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can contact your client relationship manager directly at 888-872-2364. And just to reiterate, I will be sending a follow-up email to everybody that attended with a link to view the recorded webinar. You can expect that within the next couple of days. And if there are no other questions, we appreciate your time and participation. Thank you very much and have a good rest of the day. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. I appreciate it.
Jeff, I have one more question for you, actually. Someone just
queued another
one up. We typically extend our 5,500 due to the discretionary contribution. Our CRM knows this. Do I need to contact someone else on this since we are new to TRA?
So I'm sorry, Bill, the question was the employer discretionary contribution?
Yes, they typically extend their 5,500 due to the discretionary contribution. Their CRM knows this. Do they need to contact someone else on this since we are new to TRA?
No, as long as the client relationship manager is aware of this, we should be able to, if a company needs to, for instance, go on extension for their 5,500 and we need to prepare the filing for that, that's something that we can accommodate. So I wouldn't say that you need to make any additional requests for that.
Thank you. Okay, that looks like it's it for the time being. Again, if you have any additional questions, contact your CRM. The number is 888-872-2364. And again, appreciate your time. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.